we got a very special topic for y'all. This has kind of been like the holy grail of fitness for a while. It's been long debated. If you do a search for this thing, you're going to just see angry people yelling at you on the TV. It's source of much interesting conversation. I like it because it's one of those fiery topics. A lot of people have tried to sell you this one too. If you take my new Charlie supplement, you will magically gain a bunch of muscle and lose a bunch of fat at the same time. And yeah, science, who knows, maybe. Yes, friends, we are talking about the ever elusive merman, only known as Body Recomp. And if you're new to this world and I haven't done a good enough job explaining it, here's the caffeinated what. What the heck is Body Recomp? For some of you guys, you will know exactly what it is, but for some of you guys newer to this stuff, Body Recomp's the process of losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time. The reason Body Recomp in itself is as popular as it is, it's kind of evident. I mean, would you like to lose a little fat? I would. Would you like to gain a little muscle? I would. Who wants to wait? In fact, I would venture a guess that almost every single person watching this show or listening to this show right now probably wouldn't mind doing that as well. I think that's fair. So in today's segment, we're going to talk about Body Recomp. We'll talk about if, how, and when it's possible. We'll talk about when Body Recomp can just be downright dangerous. And I will share my most recent experiences with Body Recomp with you. Was I able to do one? Was it possible for me? Or did I fall short? I also want to clarify another two terms you guys might have heard thrown around as well. Both of these are kind of slangy bro speakish, and I've probably mentioned them before on the show. You may have heard me talk about main gaining or gaintaining. Big Al loves it when I talk main gains. This is the process of when you're trying to continue to add muscle on without gaining fat, or at least significant fat. This is different than Body Recomp. That in Body Recomp, again, we have the common goal of gaining muscle while losing fat. We're actively trying to do both. So let's break it down into kind of common sense, sciencey parts. You know, if you've been watching Caffeinated, there's really no escaping a little sciencey talk. So how do we gain muscle? Well, when we are resistance training or lifting weights, we are aiming for the process of muscle hypertrophy. This is the process that when the fibers of the muscle sustain damage or injury, they're sometimes called micro tears. When the body repairs the muscles, it repairs the damaged tissue by fusing it back bigger and stronger. We aim to use progressive overload to do this, which is basically a systematic way of lifting more weight over time to help hypertrophy. Important to note, we'll use this later, one of the best ways to create an anabolic environment or muscle building environment is with a caloric surplus. Simply meaning we're eating a bit more than we're burning. It's giving us a little extra there to build the muscle with. All right, easy enough. We're lifting weights, progressively overloading our muscles, and we're eating enough to try to build the muscles. Cool. Next up, how do we lose fat? Well, you can watch our segment. Basically, as far as the muscle part goes, we definitely want to keep our training and our lifting heavy because we certainly don't want to lose muscle when trying to lose fat. Muscle helps us lose fat through raising our metabolism as it helps us burn more calories at rest. It raises our metabolic rate. We do, however, want to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight, which means in layman's terms, we want to be eating a little bit less than we're burning. If we're doing this correctly, our body will make up those extra calories we're not eating that it needs by using fat for fuel. So simply, to lose fat, we continue to lift heavy weights and we basically eat a little less than we're burning every day. Notice I didn't mention intense cardio. You can watch that segment as well. Why it's killing your gains. Check that out too. So here's the good stuff. We now know how to build muscle and we know how to lose fat. But if you were keenly listening, I hope you were, you probably heard me mention in order to build muscle, it's extremely important to be in a caloric surplus. And to burn fat, it's extraordinarily necessary to be in a caloric deficit. As I get my coffee ready, I feel a conflict brewing as how we would do both of those things at the same time. How can I be in a caloric surplus and a caloric deficit at the same time? Well, you can't, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. Not exactly. So, how and when is a body recomp actually possible? Well, an important side note as well, good info. I'm the boss. Need the info. When we're talking about body recomp as well, I want to state we want to be talking about a majority of notable gains, meaning muscle gain you can see and you can tell you're making muscle gains. And the same goes for fat loss, guys. You can see it in the mirror, how your clothes fit, and you can feel it in the gym and the way you train. You're stronger, all that good stuff. We don't want to technically, go from 100 pounds to 100.05 pounds of muscle. And we don't want to have 50 pounds of fat to lose. And now we have 49 and a half. That's not really what we're shooting for here. I say this because there have been studies in the past. I'll try and link some in the show notes. Going to be a lot of references today, where they've shown body recomp is possible, but the results aren't necessarily extraordinary. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but we want to be getting the most bang for our metabolic buck. I like that, metabolic buck. How about next episode we do the metabolic buck stops here? Where you going, Big Al? So we want results that are not only technically there, but that we can see and that we're happy with. All right, so now let's get to the good stuff. Is body recomp possible? Yes, there are a few situations that it actually is possible, and there are 3 distinct categories of people who can potentially do it. 1, you are new to training and or good nutrition. What do I mean by this? Well, the first category is easy. If you just started lifting weights, I mean strength training, you are likely about to get the best muscle gains of your life. My beautiful wife just had our baby. She's 3 months out. She just started lifting heavy for the first time in her life, like really trying to strength train. She's doing amazingly. She's lost all the baby weight. She looks terrific because she's really applying the strength training. I'm really proud of her. Anyone not having had the stimulus of progressive overload before, your muscles are primed to grow. Your metabolism is primed to be revved. If you combine that with good nutrition, you can absolutely gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. This is what is affectionately called newbie gains. You're new to this way of doing it, and newbie gains. All right. Now, good nutrition, Charlie, that's kind of a broad term regarding nutrition. I am pretty sure if I asked a paleo person or a vegetarian, a veggie, or a carnivore, or a vegan, good nutrition could absolutely mean quite a few different things. So what do I mean? What would I say here on Caffeinated is the caffeinated definition of good nutrition? I would say you are getting adequate protein from good bioavailable sources. Let's say 3/4 to a gram per pound of body weight. That sounds good. You are adequately consuming healthy sources of carbohydrates, like slow burning, low glycemic foods during the day, even at night. Oatmeal is a good one that can help you sleep the carbs at night. And even some higher glycemic carbs before and after your training, such as bananas. That's a big one for me. I have banana as part of my pre-workout every stinking day. I actually feel like we can never get enough bananas in my house. It's like a bunch of monkeys living here. I would also say your fat consumption is also at minimum enough to keep you hormonally healthy. You're going to hear recommended 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. That's one personally I don't think you should overthink. As long as you have a balanced diet and you're not purposely avoiding fat, meats, dairy, fatty fish, nuts and seeds, even vegetables like avocado and olive oil, all great sources of dietary fat. So if you're eating a varied diet and you're eating enough, you're probably getting enough fat hormonally. Your dietary preference may be different. You may want more fat or less. That's different. So yeah, if you do those 3 things, the good nutrition that I'm talking about, even if you don't play with your caloric intake, you're not counting calories, and you just start lifting weights and you start eating well, you can certainly put on muscle and lose fat at the same time. I also want to say anecdotally, there have been times in my life I thought my nutrition was spot on. And I made a little change. I kind of figured something out for myself, and I saw enormous results this way as well. I'm looking at you, carb timing. This is another one too. If you realize you really weren't eating enough, or your calories, your protein wasn't enough. Again, like me, perhaps you weren't timing carbohydrates correctly, and you kind of just broke the code for yourself. You figured out, okay, if I do it this way, I feel better. All these good things kind of fall into place. This can be a situation as well when body recomp can happen. But the question is, will you be able to do it forever and have like the ultimate physique you want? Probably not. I would guess no. You will need dedicated muscle gain and fat loss phases, but this should be great news for all you guys who are new to working out, health and nutrition, all that kind of stuff we talk about. And this can give you a little bit more push, a little more motivation, I hope. All right, you got this. Now get moving. All right. The number 2 reason you can do a body recomp. You're getting back into training and potentially good nutrition after a hiatus. We see this time and time again. Unfortunately, I see it a lot. People who kind of fall off the wagon and who get back on the wagon. The good news is that initial jumpstart phase is where people can see the quickest changes in their physique. Unfortunately, for those people, consistency and routine becomes that much more important. And I'd ask you, are you somebody who has had phases in your life where you were training and eating well, and then you just kind of stopped? You know, you kind of were going full force and then boop. If you get back into that kind of a lifestyle, you can and should see great results. You should feel really optimistic about that. But the best results are always going to come with consistency over time, with habits. I kind of look at it like investing. That's something I'm interested in. It's a hobby of mine, you know, dollar cost averaging and using something tried and true like the S&P 500, you know, even tucking money away into your 401k or your IRA every month. These are generally practices and habits that you become more and more powerful with as you have more time in the game. The longer you're doing things, the easier it becomes because it becomes a much more important part of your life and it becomes routine. These healthy habits also release dopamine and endorphins that make you feel great after you do it. So I would ask you, if you've taken a hiatus from working out and eating well as well, and it's been a personal choice, not like a health reason, you didn't sustain an injury or whatever, what's keeping you from being consistent? Have you given yourself enough time in a routine to establish it? Think about what's thrown you off in the past. Get to know yourself a little bit, really think about this stuff, and hopefully this time getting back into it will be your best and your last having to get back into it. Also, I'll leave you guys a link to our segment on atomic habits and how you can use them. Okay, the number 3 reason you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Uh-oh, here it comes. We're teeing up and we're going into the danger zone. Right into the danger zone. This involves the kind of supplements you buy not in the front but the back of the supermarket. Yeah, I'm talking of course about anabolic steroids and other drugs. And no, let me be clear, zoom in on me, Big Al. I 100% recommend you do not take these, and I would extra emphasize, do not be an idiot and break the law. It's simply not worth your life or your health. But pharmaceuticals are another way people achieve this. I understand it can be tempting for certain people. The easier road is called just that for a reason. It can be easier. You see results faster. But I promise you, if you put the work in over time, it will be that much more beneficial to your health in the long run. And no, I'm not just talking about the dangers of drugs. They're dangerous. It's not a good idea, in my opinion, to take steroids. But in terms of getting the most out of something, in my life, I have seen countless people in the gym literally inflate and then they deflate. They come into the gym one day, they start getting noticeably bigger, and then one day after a few months, they're noticeably smaller. And this wasn't creatine that did it. They didn't change up their whey protein and gain and lose 20 pounds. You know, they go on a cycle of something, they're on top of the world, and then when it's done, they're not feeling so good. This can have enormous psychological implications as well. And it can start a really bad cycle I've seen time and time again. And to be fair, I am biased. I do not use pharmaceuticals. To me, it's simply not worth it. And I'm not talking about people who are using TRT because they actually need it. We did a whole segment on that as well. However, from a moral point of view, I just also want to state, I'm not judging anyone. It's your body to do what you want to do with it, but I would suggest think it through and know all the variables before you make a choice like that. And of course, speak to a doctor before you do anything even remotely close to that. So these are the 3 categories of when a body recomp is possible. And I also want to put an emphasis on when we're talking body recomp, we're trying to get, in some cases, a little bit of both worlds. We're trying to get some muscle gain and some fat loss. But if our primary goal is really to lose fat, if you've got a lot of fat to lose, you want to be in a caloric deficit. Body recomp shouldn't be a thing you're even thinking about. And the same goes for muscle gain. If the number one thing you need to do is gain muscle, you're a 100-pound string bean soaking wet, you need to be in a caloric surplus to do that. Body recomp is not what you should even be thinking about doing. You want to be eating more so you can grow muscle. So this body recomp thing is kind of an uncharted territory that isn't necessarily optimal depending on what your goal is, where you're at. Now, obviously though, the reason body recomp is very popular is for people who have been lifting weights for a while, like myself. They don't necessarily want to be putting on fat while they're gaining muscle. They also don't potentially want to lose a little muscle when they're losing fat. So it's kind of this sought after Goldilocks zone that is most often unattainable or has negligible results. But I'm going to have to recaffeinate for this next part because I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Have I ever done a body recomp? Sure. When I was 12 years old or whatever the heck it was, when I started going to the gym with my dad, one of the best things I ever did for my life, I certainly did. I was a newbie once and I made newbie gains, but that's not really all that interesting. Everyone starting out can do that. I was definitely overweight when I started, and I might have had some great genetic potential. Like anybody, certain muscles grow easier for me, certain muscles don't. But I don't think my experience is any more impressive than anyone else's in that regard. But now I have over 25 years of weightlifting experience. I'm pretty strong and I have pretty low body fat. So it's going to be harder for me now to get those results. What if I did a body recomp now? How would I go about it? Would it work? Would it not? Could I actually do it? Well, I think I might have. You tell me. Number one, I'm not a newbie. Number two, I did not just resume training after a hiatus. And number three, I am not using pharmaceuticals. But I did get a DEXA scan about 3 months ago. It was just after a fat loss phase. I wanted to get a more accurate idea of my results. I was about to go into a maintenance phase where I would be eating basically what I was burning, just kind of a caloric homeostasis. And you can check out our maintenance diet episode for more on that kind of stuff. So what's a DEXA scan? A DEXA scan is basically an X-ray that measures bone density, fat tissue, and muscle tissue. It's like an overall body composition test. You lay on a table, the scan might have been 5 minutes. I like the idea of using a DEXA scan as a tool. Now, it's not an end-all be-all. There's a margin of error, absolutely, but I like to use this as a measuring stick. I use DEXA scans to keep tabs on my progress versus previous scans. Nothing's perfect, but I can use this as a benchmark to weigh future progress against. I like to get one every 2 to 3 months. So what did I find after this DEXA scan that was interesting? Well, first off, I want to say I was expecting my muscle mass would have gone up because I had noticed that. And I thought my body fat percentage might have gone up a little bit too. Not too much, but that's kind of expected when you're putting on muscle. What I found was surprising though. My muscles were absolutely bigger. My muscles were fuller. My lifts were stronger in the gym. Check one off for muscle gain, I think. Would you say, Big Al? But the DEXA scan, full disclosure, showed my muscle mass trended very slightly, just a bit downward. Wow, that's kind of weird. It was within the margin of error for sure. Could have been what I ate that day or didn't. I don't know. But what was most interesting is my body fat percentage on the DEXA scan went down. The scan suggested I lost an additional 1.5 pounds of fat. On my stomach, or what's called the android region, I lost close to 2% body fat. When you're already at a good body fat percentage, 2% is a lot. When you're going from 30 to 28%, you won't notice it. But when you go to 12 to 10 or something like that, you will. And that's also where you want to lose the fat from. Not only is it great to see abs, yeah, it's cool, but more stomach fat is strongly linked to a higher mortality rate. All kinds of disease and crap out there, they can tie stomach fat to a lot of the time. So chalk one up for abs and health there too, and fat loss, I guess. In part, this was so shocking to me because I was no longer eating in a caloric deficit. I wasn't trying to lose any more fat. I was happy. Now my muscles are noticeably bigger and fuller. I was stronger in the gym, and now I've lost some fat as well. That sounds like a body recomp. So what the heck happened? How is this possible? Well, I don't know. But I have an idea of a couple of things that might have contributed to it. First, when I changed from a fat loss to a maintenance mode, I started supplementing creatine again. My weight had trended upwards slightly with the creatine, as expected from intracellular water, creatine episode for more, and it clearly wasn't fat, as my fat percentage had gone down. I still looked good enough. but the creatine could have definitely contributed to my muscles being bigger and stronger. Second thing I did, I also changed up my training. I started to use a slightly lower rep range, and obviously, I wanted to use heavier weights, which I did. I gave my body a new stimulus, and it definitely responded. Whenever I change phases from fat loss to maintenance or muscle gain, reverse diet, whatever the heck it is, I always try to change up the stimulus of my workouts as well, try to give myself a little bit of an advantage there. I don't think you have to constantly keep your muscles guessing. I think that's kind of baloney, cliche baloney. But this could have certainly helped as I'm now using heavier weights too. Now, thirdly, this is a big one too. I'm eating more in maintenance. And as soon as I could take up my calories, I literally just sandwiched them around my training. So when I went out of fat loss to maintenance, let's say I could take my calories up 500 calories. It was like 250 before, 250 after, and it's gonna help my workouts a whole lot. As far as I'm concerned, those new calories was just adding more fuel to my workouts. It was gonna make me mentally feel better and clear up diet fatigue, all that good stuff. And now I'm also adding glycogen to my muscles, or the body's preferred way of storing carbs in the muscle. And that's more energy for recovery in me as well. So this definitely had a huge effect on my workouts. It only helps the cause. Cool. Lastly, I kept making a concerted effort to keep walking, but I keep the higher intensity cardio, like running, which I do love, to a minimum. I would continue to opt to box instead of run, which just feels better for my muscles and my joints. You know, I've noticed a tendency in people when they're starting to eat more after a fat loss phase, they sometimes add more exercise or cardio to combat the new calories. They're out of the fat loss, but they're still kind of afraid to potentially add weight on, even if it's not fat. It could be glycogen, muscle, the sheer volume of food. This is a mistake I fortunately did not make. I'm experienced enough to kind of see that one coming, and I didn't do it. Those are the three things I did. I'm 25 years plus into weight training. Did I do a body recomp? Did I find the holy grail of fitness with Dr. Jones? Did you find a body recomp, Junior? Well, to be fair, the DEXA scan didn't show significant muscle gain. It was within the margin of error, but who knows? It did, however, show significant fat loss. I was eating more. My scale weight also went up a little bit. That could have been the creatine, but again, there's less fat on me. Now, could the creatine have been why my muscles were bigger and stronger? Could it have been glycogen and the sheer volume and all that stuff and that fuel allowing me to lift heavier? Could it have been that instead of technically muscle tissue? Well, sure, I guess it could have been those things, but do I really care? Isn't that what we want? We want bigger, stronger muscles. Does the composition of intracellular water and glycogen for fuel, creatine, ATP, all that fun stuff versus lean tissue matter on such a small level? I don't think so. I saw results and I'm happy. Certainly, they weren't in the results of the first two, and certainly nowhere near what would be done pharmaceutically, which I won't do. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if you technically call it a body recomp, but it sure felt like it. I've got the DEXA scan to prove it. I'm happy with the results. It worked out well, and I'll keep trying this stuff in the future. You know, the other thing too is, I just had a new baby. I'm on limited sleep, and to be able to do that during that phase, it's pretty good. Pretty good. So, all right, guys and gals, let me know what you think. Is it even possible to body recomp? Did I do one or what? Have you ever done one? I want to hear from you guys.